So over the last couple of months, I have been fascinated by scorecards. Now I use them for my DPhil and I've now used them also for my podcast. And I think they are really, really useful. I've been following this guy called Daniel Priestley, and I've basically read all his books and I have consumed a lot of his podcasts. And one of the things he says is everything is downstream from lead generation. Now, as a business owner, which I'm not, I'm a DPhil student, but as a business owner, the success of your business will be determined by the success of the leads you generated. What leads are basically potential customers. Now, there are various ways to get leads. The traditional one is advertising. You print something in a newspaper, you have a Super Bowl ad, and you have advertisements on YouTube and so on. And while all of those are classical and traditional ways of doing it, they have one fundamental flaw, which is you are sending a lot of things, they're all broadcast, but you're not really hearing back from people. And as someone who's making a podcast, I want to engage with the community, or with YouTube, I want to engage with the community. Remember, that was one reason why I started this YouTube channel. And when you do advertisements or just broadcast, even if it's free and not technically advertisements, you're not getting anything back. There's no conversation. And more importantly, you're not getting back, even if you get something back, it could just be like, this was good. That sort of a comment, or just a thumbs up. There's no real information that's coming back. And I think with scorecards and this idea of scorecard marketing that Dan talks about, the idea is that people get a lot of value because they get an assessment for them. And as from the back end, as the business owner, as the creator, as the entrepreneur, what you get is a breakdown of what the needs of your clientele is, or what the needs of your listeners are, or what the needs of your customers are, depending on what context you're using it. For me, it's more on the creator context. I realized the moment I put my scorecard out, it was hugely popular, first of all, because a lot of people filled it in and got a lot of value. The way I use my scorecard, by the way, is I have like about 50 episodes of my podcast right now, and it's hard to tell which podcast is right for what person at what time. And so the way I use that scorecard is I have disintegrated emotional intelligence into 5 categories, and people fill that scorecard and then they are rated against those 5 categories, and based on your score on those categories you get recommendations. And so you can decide that, hey, I'm great at focus and action, but I'm not probably as good as self-compassion, or I don't probably understand things around self-esteem or something like that, and then I should focus on that. Or you could double down on your strengths. That could be your decision, but at least you get a personalized assessments of what areas you're strong and weak at, and then you can do whatever you want after that. That is immense value for the people taking it, but it is also immense value on the back end, where I'm understanding that, hey, my listeners in general tend to be hyperachievers, but they probably are not taking time off, and they're too perfectionistic, and they probably don't see perfectionism as a form of self-hate. And when I see that more globally, I'm able to be like, okay, so maybe I'll record an episode on perfectionism. And so if you haven't taken the scorecard, that's my plug. It's posted in the description. But another place which I use scorecards and questionnaires and quizzes all the time is mental health research. So one of my DPhil research is about studying mental health. Now, as a researcher, one problem in studying mental health is that, well, I cannot actually meet a lot of people. There's a physical limitation on how many people I can myself meet. B, I'm not a clinician, so I don't know how to diagnose. And C, even if people who know how to diagnose could have multiple diagnoses. And we talked about in the AI mental health video that people can have different diagnoses, and different diagnoses share the same symptoms. So are they two different illnesses, or are they the same thing? All of this can be a bit of a mess. But when you take questionnaires, you get a fairly reliable measure of what's happening. And beyond that, you can also think about mental illnesses as being across multiple symptoms. So rather than depression being its own category and anxiety being its own category, we all know that they actually share some symptoms. And once you have questionnaires across multiple different mental illnesses, we can make claims like, hey, there are actually 5 core dimensions along with mental health exist, even though we have like 50 mental health conditions traditionally listed out. Questionnaires can be quite a solid and reliable way of understanding the underlying variation. Now, of course, you may say that, hey, people can fill questionnaires differently, and that's absolutely correct. People can, and that can be one flaw in it. But traditional psychology also diagnoses based on like subjective checking of symptoms, which can also have flaw in it. And again, I'm not advocating for just like all of diagnosis should now just be questionnaires only, but the fact that they help diagnosis is undeniable. People do research like myself. Like, how do you know a drug is working for depression? Let's say you take questionnaires before and you take questionnaires after, and then you see if there's any improvement. So questionnaires can be a vital source of information in improving mental health research. So a bit of a rambly video about questionnaires and the utility of it, one from a random business perspective and the other from a mental health diagnostic perspective. And I obviously don't need to say, but they can be great for self-assessment also, because you don't need anyone. You can just take a questionnaire, and then, well, a traditional quiz is a questionnaire, and you can take that quiz for yourself to see where you are standing in a particular area, and then obviously your teacher or your instructor will know where you are at as well. So questionnaires are good, they are great. I had a bit of a icky feeling towards them, especially thinking of school exams and stuff. But if you strip away the negativity that's associated with like grades and comparisons and all of that, questionnaires themselves, separate from like comparisons and achievement and perfectionism, can be quite a useful tool and have applications in multiple areas of life.